Hi, welcome back. So today I got on my ET sweatshirt. Ouch. And I'm thinking about movies. And so I wanted to fill you in on some props that I had made in the past before I'd started filming. Um, so this is just going to be a combination of me kind of like showing those things. Some of them are pictures, some of them are GIFs, and talking about how I did them. So if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, stick around and check it out. And before I get into things too much, let me just say essentially like all these ideas for the most part came from a channel called Scott Prop and Roll. He's like a prop master he lives in, I think, Austin, Texas. He's a professional prop master and he has a lot of videos. If this is interesting to you, you should check it out. You probably already know about it. Just giving credit to him. He's already done all this stuff and he's done it better. This is just me. I wanted to try my hand at it. I've always liked working with my hands. I've had a lot of jobs that were like mechanical or where I was building things, creating things, doing stuff like that. And in my more recent careers, I hadn't been doing that and I wanted to find a way to get back into it. Yeah, this is just me trying to do something new and seeing if I can do it. So the first group of projects, we're going to call them icy projects. This first one here is a glass of ice water, but the ice is made up of just saran wrap. So you can just take some saran wrap, put it in a glass, fill it up with water, and it can mimic ice in a glass. And people might be like, why would you do all this? Again, remember, these is from a prop master. So this is like for movies and TV shows where they're going to be taking multiple shots of things and you want continuity between the shots. And so if you had a glass of ice water, it would constantly be sweating and the ice would be melting and changing and things. And so if you make fake ice, you don't have to worry about that. The next one here is also going to be very similar, but it's ice cubes. And I made this from like rubber glass. And there's multiple products. I think in his video, he talks about something called Siliglass, like silicone glass. But I couldn't find where it was available for like someone outside of that industry to purchase it. So I had to purchase mine from a different company. You just kind of have to search around for like rubber glass, silicone glass. There's various companies out there. I think some from Asia make it too, and it just comes in like an AB solution where you mix equal parts together and it cures kind of over 24 hours or so. Be careful when you're working with that stuff. I had one where I made a mold and out of cardboard that was too thin, and it kind of soaked through the cardboard and got out and got on everything. And like once silicone gets on something and becomes like its hard form, like it's almost impossible to clean. I had a little bit of luck with rubbing alcohol and mineral spirits, but just be careful working with that stuff. All right, so this next project is a bag of ice. So it's just one of those classic ice bags, which are harder to find than you'd think. I had to go to a few gas stations and I couldn't quite find what I wanted. And so then I just found what I wanted and bought it online. And now I have a bunch more of them than I need. But anyway, you take one of those bags and you stuff bubble wrap in it. There's different kinds of bubble wrap, obviously. There's like the really large bubble ones and the really tiny bubble ones. I think it works best to get something kind of in the middle so that the bubbles are approximately the size of an ice cube. The really large bubbles were kind of obvious that it was bubble wrap, to me at least. I imagine the really tiny ones would kind of do the same, although maybe not. Maybe that'll look good. I just had large and medium bubbles and I thought the medium ones looked better. And you just set it somewhere and then you take a spray bottle and kind of soak around it so it looks like it's melting. All right, this next one was fun, mostly because I got to buy some fake fish and I like buying silly props. I always wanted a rubber chicken when I was a kid, and when I became an adult, I finally was able to purchase one for myself. And then I also have those wieners on a string that you always see in cartoons. But this one I got to buy rubber fish. I was super stoked about that. But anyway, it's just supposed to mimic like a fish market kind of thing. And you use rock salt. I couldn't find like the granule size rock salt that I wanted for this. It wasn't winter at the time that I was doing the project. And also I live in an area where it typically doesn't snow at all. So there wasn't a lot of selection. And I also found out too, there's different opacities of rock salt, and it's not like you can normally like look at, oh, this bag, what's the opacity of this one? This bag, what's the opacity of this one? Because normally people are buying this to melt snow or whatever. Looking at the pictures here, it's a little too opaque, and I feel like the granule size is off. But when the prop master did it, it looked great the way that he did it with rock salt. I think you'd want bigger chunks to look like bigger, bigger chunks of ice. It would be more convincing than these tiny little pebbles. But this is what I got, so I felt sufficient to me to demonstrate the concept. So, all right, then this last one in this group is like an ice pack, like you'd use a sports ice pack, the kind that the blue, who knows what it is, and you put it in your freezer, and then you can stick it where you want. So what this is yeah, I bought a few of those, cut them open, suck the stuff out, dispose of it properly. You can look up online how you're supposed to get rid of it. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember it was a little bit of a thing. You don't want to just pour it down your drain or throw it in the trash anyway. And so I tried doing this multiple ways. There's UV epoxy resin, which cures with UV light. There's just epoxy resin, and that will harden with time and heat. And then the next thing was, when you buy this stuff, a lot of times it's clear and you have to add color to it. So I also did one where I think I had to dye the UV resin. I think I had to dye the epoxy resin. And then I found one epoxy resin that was already the color that I wanted it to be. And so I just wanted to, again, I'm trying to build skills here. And so I wanted to try out all three ways. Obviously you don't have to do that. You can just pick one and do it. I think after doing it in concept, it seemed like all of them worked well, but I might have needed to use more dye in some of them. And then the other thing is, make sure, don't use too much heat. Don't use too much at a time. It can create this thermal reaction. If you put too much in, it'll get too hot, and then it kind of warps the plastic. So you'll just do a little, let it harden, do a little more, let it harden. The UV one, you're just going to be careful with how much you're putting it under the lamp at once, like how intense, how close you're putting it to the lamp. Just don't be like so aggressive, is all I'm saying. The other thing I was not sure about from his video was, you have to cut it open, you have to get it open to get that blue stuff out so you can put the new stuff in. And I was like, how did they do that part? What I ended up doing that I think worked best was, you don't have to completely cut it open. You can cut like a tiny little hole, and then you can kind of like squeeze it out like a toothpaste tube out of that tiny little hole. And then you can kind of like use a syringe or something and like rinse out and get all the stuff out, just kind of like through a small hole. And then you can inject the resin and back into that hole. That way there's just this tiny hole, and you don't even have to worry about closing it, because once it hardens, it's not going to drain out anymore. And then when you are drying it, make sure that it's on a level surface. You'll probably want to clamp it. I just took 2 painter's sticks, like the wooden painter sticks, and just took some like hardware clamps and kind of like sandwiched it between those painter sticks to keep it in there. And then you want to put it on a level surface. Otherwise, you're going to have like a fat end and a skinny end of the resin once it's dry, and you obviously don't want that. And then the last detail of this is like how you get that frost effect. And it's a mixture. Let me see if I can remember. It's hot water, non-scented Epsom salt dissolved, and then just a little bit of clear dish soap. And then you put it in a spray bottle. You just kind of have to mess with the mixture. You want to use a lot of Epsom salt, if I recall, because that's what's leaving behind that residual effect. Yeah, I had to use more than I thought. And then, yeah, once it dries, it takes a little while. You can use a hair dryer, or if you have a heat gun. But again, make sure the heat gun doesn't melt the plastic, and then that makes it dry faster, and you can see how it's going to turn out. All right, this next one's super silly. It was one he did, and I was just like, I just want to try it. Looks like fun. It's from the movie Terminal with Tom Hanks, and it's like the scene where he's eating a hamburger and he eats it really fast. And he was just saying, like, like when you're looking at it, you're just seeing the side and top of the hamburger. So really what you can do is kind of hollow it out. Like you just have like the outer ring of the meat, and even the bottom bun, you can do the same thing. So it's just like a whole top bun and then just a ring of meat in the inside and a ring of bottom bun, and you just hold it in a way that That's all you see. And then that way you can like shove it into your mouth and eat it a lot faster, and it looks more impressive. Like, oh my gosh, that person ate a hamburger so quickly. All right, then we'll call this like desserts or ice cream. So you can make an ice cream cone or you can make an ice cream sandwich. So this ice cream cone was made, so you just take cake icing, just like vanilla, cake icing, cake frosting, and powdered sugar, and you just mix it together like you would, mix flour into dough, and you just keep mixing and mixing and mixing it, literally just like dough. It'll just be really sticky because frosting obviously is sticky, but as you add more powdered sugar to it, it starts to become less sticky. It turns into dough. It kind of blew my mind. It was cool. And then once it's a dough, you can basically put it onto the ice cream cone so that it looks like you have an ice cream cone. That's it. And then the ice cream sandwich, same exact thing. First, you're going to do that. You're going to square it off, make it look like a ice cream sandwich. I just made sure that I had ice cream sandwiches there for reference, so I knew how big to make it. Okay, and then this next part, the cookies. I tried to salvage the cookies off of the ice cream sandwich. I think I tried to use like a knife, and I very carefully like cut the cookies off the top of the ice cream. It didn't work very well. Like, I used a whole box of ice cream sandwiches, and I think I ended up with like, I don't know, a 4 to 6 of these cookies, and then I just picked the best ones. And in the picture you can see like it didn't turn out that well. They're so sticky. Even if you somehow can be super careful and get all the ice cream off of them or whatever, you can buy these online. And if you want to actually do this for some reason, whatever, just buy them online. It's so hard to salvage the cookies off of like actual ice cream sandwiches. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. All right, this next one is like more continuing with the edible food things, but this one's more like things you wouldn't necessarily want to eat. So this was mayo and Crisco. And then the mayo one, I did 2 different ways. So one of them is just like vanilla yogurt, like Greek yogurt, and you just add a little bit of yellow food coloring to it. Again, just compare it to actual mayo. You're gonna need a jar anyway. So just have it for reference, and then you just, keep adding food dye until it matches the mayo. And then the other way was no-bake cheesecake filling or no-bake cheesecake. Yeah, no-bake cheesecake filling. That one was a little difficult to find at some of the grocery stores I have around here, but I think if you look around, it's in like the pudding section at my grocery store. That one, you just use it straight up. And then again, like, you're just gonna have a used up mayo jar and you just put it in there and eat it. That's it. Then the Crisco is, you take a thing of Crisco, you have some of the Crisco used up, or you take some of it out, and then you just you can use the foil top off of it as the false bottom, or you can just use aluminum foil, whatever, but it's going to be like, here's the Crisco thing, you take some of it out, you have this circle of foil, you put it on top of what's the residual Crisco. You don't want it empty because you don't want to have to fill the whole thing up. So now it's like a false bottom, foil bottom, and then on top of it, you're going to put white cake icing. So you bought white cake icing to make the mayo. Now you can use the rest of your white cake icing to make Crisco and freak everybody out because you're sitting around your house eating mayo, eating Crisco, watching some weird nerd dude's vlogs, and people are going to be like, this person's life's gone downhill. All right, and then the last of the old ones that I have to catch you up on with is butter, a stick of butter. Butter. So for this one, the most difficult thing is finding a butter mold. I had to buy one online. So then what you're going to do is you got to buy some white chocolate, like the white chocolate chips. Get a can of sweetened condensed milk and 2 tablespoons of butter, which is convenient because you need a butter wrapper. So now you got some butter and you're going to save that wrapper. All right, you melt all that stuff together, and then you're going to use your yellow food coloring that you had from when you make the mayo earlier, and you're going to add yellow food coloring to it until it matches the butter. And if I recall, I didn't really have to add that much yellow food coloring. Those ingredients together kind of looked like butter to me. You pour it all into the butter mold, stick it in the freezer, let it harden, and then you throw it back in that wrapper. In the meantime, I don't know, for food safety reasons, probably you should keep that wrapper in the fridge. Sometimes people will let their butter sit out on the counter, but I don't think it's probably safe enough to just throw that wrapper in the fridge, just keep it safe too. And then take it all out together, wrap it up, and then again, you can eat it in front of people and they'll think you're nuts. All right, so one more that I actually did quite a while ago was fake dirt and fake sand. So for the fake dirt, really all you need to buy is like one of those variety packs of like Oreo kind of cookies where they have the chocolate and vanilla Oreos. Doesn't have to be like the Oreo brand. And then you're gonna buy some ginger snaps too, and you put them into a food processor, predominantly the chocolate Oreos, you know, the other ones are more for like texture, a little color, and then you can use like white sprinkles or jimmies. And you're just gonna mix it up until it looks the right color, and that's all you have to do for the fake dirt. And then the sand was like a myriad of ingredients. You can use heat-treated wheat flour. It needs to be heat-treated because otherwise you're at risk of foodborne illness like E. coli, salmonella. Then you can also use blue corn tortilla chips because if you look at sand, it's kind of got little black speckles in it sometimes. You can use like Cheerios or Toasted O's. You can use graham crackers, you know, cookies without frosting, just anything that's like that blonde kind of granular color, and mix it up. And then that's all you got to do for the sand. All right, so now you're all caught up on all the projects I've been doing. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And that's all I have for today.
Okay, bye.